How are you guys doing? Something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is how much are we paying to the banks over the course of our lifetime for all of the things that they do for us, and they're so great about doing all these things for us. And I was like, can you imagine if we got to add up how much it cost us to invest with them and buy our house and have our credit cards and have our banks and everything? And I didn't go ahead and add all that up because today I just want to talk about investing with the banks and how much that would cost an average Canadian over their lifetime, just in one scenario, using a major fund from each one of the banks to see how much that might actually cost. And what will happen at the end is I'm going to show you how much money Canadians actually have in these 6 funds that I'm going to talk about. And imagine if we just took that money out of those funds and actually moved it into, a lower cost investment option with a smaller company and allowed them to be profitable. You know how much more money would actually be in the hands of average Canadians' retirement portfolios? Would be mind-boggling. At the end of the day, it would mean more money in our hands and not in the profits of the actual banks. And I know that people love the idea of big companies making all this money, but as far as I can tell, I don't believe that all of that money that the banks made last year in their record-making years trickled down to all of us. I don't know if you got a rebate check or something from the bank. And yeah, you got your dividend payments from investing in the banks, but I guarantee you that you paid more to the bank than you got in your dividend check, unless you're ultra wealthy. And if you are, why the hell are you watching my channel that's talking about average Canadians? Anyway, enough of a bank rant. I created a spreadsheet. I decided to take 6 sort of major funds. If you're with one of these major institutions and your money's there, chances are you might own part or all of your portfolio in one of these funds. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that you started investing at 30 years old, you had $50,000, and you were putting in $6,000 a year for the rest of your life until you were 65, and then you started drawing out of that account, and you lived till 90. You had no money left when the time you were 90. So that's what these spreadsheets are going to show, is that you start with 50, you're growing by 4% until 65, you start withdrawing out of those accounts, and then you're down to 0 at 90 years old. So at 65, that's when you're paying the most amount of money to your bank and your advisor. And I also want to point out, before I get into this, I have absolutely no problem with advisors. I don't have a problem with advisors. When I started K4, my whole object was, all I want to do is take out the bank's profits and allow Canadians to save that amount of money. I still think that advisors are important in a lot of cases, as I've talked about in many videos before. If you want to do it yourself, then go ahead and do it yourself, and you should be able to save a lot of money and get better returns. I also think that higher end sort of wealth management advisors or whatever, once we start talking to people that have in excess of $1 million in a portfolio, I'm starting to talk to myself about being like, look, we're charging you an awful lot to give you advice that's not that much harder to give than to somebody with, say, 500 grand. It's why I've been contemplating sort of a different fee structure where maybe I'm going to actually just cap my fees and say, okay, K4 does not charge an extra dollar. I don't care how much more money you have, because in my mind, it's not actually that hard. And you don't need to earn that much money off of one human being, because I know that there are advisors out there that make like $60,000 or $70,000 a year off just one rich client alone, which is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, how much advice are you really giving? How many meetings are you having? What are you doing? You're not doing anything. We're not picking better investments for you, and I cannot stress that enough. Every single one of these portfolios is virtually identical, built by a professional portfolio manager that works for a gigantic financial institution, makes a huge sum of money, and their job is to do that. Now, your guy sitting across the desk from you is not managing $46 billion. They have all of these people behind them, picking them, hoping that we're going to win. And that's all we're ever doing, is saying, yes, of course we hope that our portfolio is going to outperform our competition, because this is, in essence, a competition for your business. But we don't control that. So that's a very important lesson to learn. What we're doing is providing advice, and we have nothing to do with returns. So I just want to talk about fees today. Sorry, I always go into these long rants that I don't plan on going into. We'll get to my spreadsheet. You remember the drill. Start with 50 grand, adding $6,000 a year, growing at 4%. We look at RBC Select Balanced Portfolio, one of the lowest fees of the bunch. It's got an MER of 1.94%. So you're looking at 30, paying $970 a year to Royal Bank for the pleasure of having them manage your RSP. Not terrible, but you get up to 65, you've got $639,000. That's your entire retirement savings. You're paying over $12,000 a year to Royal Bank just to have that account sitting there. Your advisor's probably making about half of that, or the branch or whatever. So is your advisor earning, $6,000 a year for you? Are they doing that work for you? Is that, that's an awful lot of money for somebody to earn, to have a couple meetings a year with you. Now, if we add all that up, until the age of 90, you have nothing left. You've paid Royal Bank $404,259. That's basically a house, just to have your investments there. I looked at IG Core Portfolio Balanced, an MER of 2.68. That's a lot higher than the RBC Select Balanced. In total, if you have your money in that portfolio for the rest of your life, then you're going to be paying $558,461. Now, I believe that IG, once you get over a specific threshold, which might be 250 or 500,000, they're going to start reducing your fees. And most institutions, once you get over 250 or 500,000, are going to introduce you to somebody else and maybe change up your investments. But that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be paying a whole lot less. So keep that in mind. TD Comfort Balanced, basically identical to the RBC one, 1.93, so $402,000 over the course of your lifetime. Scotia Partners Balanced Growth. This one's a little bit different. They don't have a Partners Balanced Not Growth, so it's not quite identical to the other 5 funds on this list. Because usually the more growth in a portfolio, then it's going to cost more. If it's more geared towards fixed income, then generally the fees are going to be less. So if the fund is taking less risk, there's less management expenses associated with it, so it will likely cost less because you're taking less risk. So 2.25% on that one. Over your lifetime, you're paying Scotiabank $468,857. CIBC Managed Balance, 2.27%, paying CIBC $473,025 over your lifetime. investing like a normal average Canadian. I see people like this all the time. This is roughly, sort of kind of what people save, they have in retirement. They've got some other accounts, maybe with work, whatever, maybe. But generally speaking, you get somewhere in that range as a couple. By the time you're 65, it's pretty normal. And BMO Select Class Balanced, another high fee one, 2.51%. Paying BMO $523,036, which is a ton of money. Now, I guess I'll just add in a story. So I had a client, and he called me the other day. He said, I'm gonna move my money because I talked to my dad's guy, and my dad's guy sat me down. He said, look how much more money you could make if you earned an extra 2% every single year for the rest of your life. This guy's about my age. And I was like, okay, well, where is he coming up with these numbers of just look at how much more you could make if you earned an extra 2%? When I actually dove deep down into it, I was like, well, this guy's actually charging an extra 1.5% on top of what I was charging this guy. I said, okay, so now he has to create an extra return of 3.5%. So he's just making this up and saying, look what would happen if you earn this extra money. But that was enough to sell this guy on saying, you know what, I want to take that risk. I want to go with this guy. He sounds absolutely awesome. I would suggest that was a big mistake, because he's paying an extra, whatever, $1,500 a year to some guy that's just telling him that he can earn whatever number he makes up in his head. So don't listen to that, because what you're truly looking at is how much does that actually cost. And then what I wanted to do, because I thought it was kind of fun, was to say, and I've done this before when I said, imagine if I could just get everybody that was invested in one fund to move to K4, or to move to Modern Advisor, or to move to Wealthsimple when we used to work with Wealthsimple, and save, whatever, 1.5% in fees, and just see how much more money would be in Canadians' pockets. And it's absolutely mind-boggling. So I looked at all these funds, and in order, the RBC fund has $46 billion in it. The IG one has $5.4 billion, TD $10.1 billion, Scotia $3.3, CIBC $3.3, and the BMO fund $1.7 billion. So that's almost $70 billion in those 6 funds alone. And obviously these institutions have way more funds. So they're charging Canadians $1.42388 billion every single year, which is like almost $1.5 billion in fees for them to invest your money in something that you could go and personally buy, a Vanguard portfolio ETF fund for next to nothing and save almost every single one of those dollars. But now I just said, okay, well, because I work with Modern Advisor, why not throw them a bone and say, what would happen if every single one of you that's watching this video and every single Canadian out there that had money in one of these funds said, you know what, let's move all our money there and see what happens. Well, all of a sudden, there would be almost a little over $1 billion in fee savings per year just for that. $1 billion extra dollars not going into the bank's coffers so that, they can have a big war chest to put other companies, under pressure, or keep it all so that they can buy these people that are trying to make advances for the Canadian public. Because that's what's happening, is all the time when all of these fintech companies come out and they start making a little bit of waves or doing whatever and creating some actual competition or good moves for Canadians, then the banks will just take their cash and buy them out and then turn them into capital generating machines over and over and over again, which is always detrimental to Canadians. So that's what's happening. That's why I always want everybody to move their money away from anything that's controlled by a bank, because I know that your investments are safe, they're going to be great, you're going to pay less, and I would love for more advisors to say, you know what, I want to take the independent route so that my clients can pay less, we can make more money on this side, you guys can keep more of your own money, and everybody would be better off for it. And that is basically the reason why I did this. And it was just some guy 6 years ago that was like, I'm going to sit in my office with a camera and see what happens. And once again, thank you guys so much for watching. Always a pleasure hearing from you. If you haven't already, please subscribe and get that money away from the bank. If you want us to talk to you about what we would do and how we could help, we'd love to hear from you. Just email us anytime, info@k4financial.ca. One of us will get back to you right away. We'd love to hear from you. Talk to you soon. Bye.